Hi, everyone, and welcome to the last chance Ask Us Anything Viterbi School of Engineering undergraduate admission first year application deadline session, where we are here to answer your questions. As you all know, we're dealing with kind of an unprecedented situation in LA County with multiple fires going on around the area. And one of our staff members was actually affected by this, was on an evacuation order, so we're not seeing her today. There's a number of different faculty and a number of different students that the school is dealing with, and we're all working on this as best as possible. Thankfully, those of us here are somewhat unaffected and we're doing fine, but we want to make sure we're addressing your questions because we know that that application deadline is looming. Before we get into the Q&A, I do want to address some relevant issues related to the Q&A. And that is if anybody has questions about that deadline, if you are in an affected area. So one thing that the university wants to make clear with everyone is that if you are in one of these affected areas affected by these fires, and you have any issues with making that deadline, the university will definitely be working with you. You can contact your admission counselor. We can put a link into our chat so you can see that real quick on how to find contact information for your admission counselor. You can contact the admission counselor and reach out, and definitely the university will work with you on meeting that deadline. So that's that. It's a really interesting time, and our hope is that over the next couple of days, this will all start to simmer down a little bit. If some of you are unaware of the geography or the topography of Los Angeles, the USC campus is not really near these fires necessarily. I mean, I think within miles, we're talking about like 10, 15, maybe 20 miles of some of these fires. It kind of surrounds the LA basin. There's no threat to the USC campus at this time. There's no threat to anything that's happening with our campus operations. Our largest thing that we're dealing with in LA, no matter where you are in LA, is the air quality. And so we are doing a lot of different things here with air quality indexes to figure out how to maintain safety. Our campus is actually still on winter break. And so there are no students on campus in case you're wondering or need to learn more about that. Our students are set to come back, and we are set to be fully operational as a campus on Monday. We might have some adjustments with air quality things for any type of outdoor activities, but also weather-wise, it would seem as though we might have some better air quality on Monday anyway. So our hearts go out to everyone that's affected by this, and we do hope that there's some resolution that will be found in the near future. That out of the way, I know that the grand majority of you don't live in LA and you have questions about the application process. So we're still here to make sure that you're getting that. And let's introduce ourselves. First off, my name is Paul Ledesma. I'm the Executive Director of Undergraduate Admission here at the Viterbi School of Engineering. Thank you for joining us. Once again, my apologies for those of you that were able to come in and saw a lot of our behind the scenes chatter. And hopefully we weren't too offensive and any of that stuff. But we were letting off some steam before we actually started chatting. Becky?
Yeah. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Becky. I'm Director of Undergraduate Admission. Again, thank you for joining us today. We're glad we could at least still do some virtual sessions to answer any questions that you have sort of last minute before the first year application deadline. So thanks for joining us.
Hello, everyone. My name is Angie. I'm the Senior Associate Director, and just echoing what my colleagues have already said, thanks for being here today, and I'm happy we can answer your questions about the application. Oh,
Yeah, Brooke, you're muted.
We can't hear you.
Best part is you saying I'm muted while you're on mute.
Hi there.
There you
This is going great so far. My name is Brooke Hyman. I'm the Associate Director here and so happy to be here. Happy New Year, everyone.
Great.
Let's go.
Thank you. All right, here's how we're going to do this, you all. There is a Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. That's yours. Use it. Go ahead and throw a question into the Q&A. Keep adding questions as much as you possibly can. If you don't have questions or you're unsure how we're going to go about this, we are going to use the upvotes to answer those questions. So when you see questions that you would like answered, hit that thumbs up button on that question. Whatever questions have the most upvotes, they're at the top of that list. We're going to answer in that order as we go throughout the hour. As we go throughout the hour, we'll only be here for the hour. I can guarantee we won't answer all of your questions, but I can guarantee in years of doing this, we will get through the main content of your concern. So keep in mind, if someone's asked a question similar to that, it will waste the time. If we've already handled that, we're just going to skip it and move on. But we will handle all these questions, and we are recording this information, this AMA. So if you missed part of it, you can watch the recording. It'll be available on our YouTube channel shortly after this, no later than tomorrow. So go ahead and hit those questions in. Go ahead and upvote those questions, and we will handle those as we go. We've already got a good number. And as a reminder, about every 15 minutes or so, I'm going to remind you to keep asking questions, because if we start running out of questions or running out of upvotes, then we're going to need you to add more as we go. So just a heads up to my staff, I don't think the upvote is automatically refreshing, because I keep needing to hit that refresh button. So just remind me if I hit something out of order. First question. Great question. Very, very specifically vague, which I love, because we're going to be able to answer it from a number of different perspectives. Derek Sanderson, congratulations, you win. You get the very first question answered on our AMA. There's no prize per se, other than the notoriety and the fame that will come to you afterwards. Derek, the question is, how do I make my application stand out? I kind of want to hear from everybody, but I want Becky to start this one out. Becky, how do they make their application stand out?
You always make me answer this question. I think, and Paul always makes me answer this question because we've worked together for a very long time, and for almost over 15 years, we've, met about applications and talked about applications. And I think the first question is, there's really not one specific way to do it. We are not looking for something specific in your application. We are looking to get to know you. So some students think, oh, do I need some dramatic, life-altering experience? And as 17, 18-year-olds, we hope you don't have those. Some of you do, and we want to hear, about what's going on in your life and what has sort of shaped you as a person, but not everyone has one, and you don't need to have these types of experiences to stand out. We just really want to get to know you, who you are, and read your application from sort of like an authentic point of view of, your life, what you bring to the table, what you want to do with your degree in engineering. And we're not looking for something specific. We don't want you to answer questions because of what you think we want to read, or what you think we think is valuable in an application. Because if we sort of said, oh, students who stand out do XYZ, and then you all go and do XYZ, well, now none of you stand out. You're all the exact same. Also, sometimes you don't necessarily want to stand out too much. As as I've been in this profession for a very long time, typically the applications that I remember are the ones that are not good, or whose essays talk about things that maybe aren't appropriate or are offensive. And
Yeah,
so
those stand out for sure.
they stand out. They definitely do. And so we just really want to get to know you. Answer your essays, answer your short answer questions, answer your quick takes with your authentic voice. Who are you? Why do you want to do engineering? Why USC? What have been your experiences? We just really want to get to know you as a student.
Any other thoughts from Angie or Brooke?
I feel like you covered that, Rebecca, very well.
Yeah, it's be you, which is fine. I think that's the thing I also want to add to that is, more often than not, as you go through this process, um, I think all in good intent, as high school students, you're getting a lot of different pieces of advice from a lot of grown-ups or adults. And I think while well intended, they can really mess with your mind and start to make you think that you're not good enough, that you don't have something special that someone's looking for, and that just isn't true. Keep in mind that out of all of the applications, you're the only you. You're the only one that's done the things that you've done. You're the only one that's accomplished the accomplishments and won the games and done the things, overcome the challenges and gone down that path and that certain combination of that path. And trust me, you have things that are going to stand out, for lack of a better term, because you're the only you. However, an attempt to stand out actually tends to diminish that level of unique qualities that you pertain, because you're going to start to like mold yourself into what you believe something a university or someone is quote looking for. And that quote looking for thing is well documented on multiple false websites like Reddit, where the idea of like what someone's looking for, we're not looking for anything. Be you, own your own experiences, be the hero of your own story, go through those steps and let us know who you are. That's what you want to do. Standing out is the wrong way to go. That said, making sure it's well written, making sure that we understand it, those are elements that are important to understand, because if we don't understand it, then we can't do a lot with it. So that's the important part. So thank you for that question. Shreya Sanath is asking the next question, which says, how much does the SAT play a role, and what would be a good SAT score to see if we should go test optional or not? So part of your question is you answer the question inside your own question. It is test optional, meaning it can't play a big role, can it? Because when over half of the applicants don't even submit it, how can it play a big role? So it doesn't. Now, if you believe you have a good score and you're very proud of that and you would like to submit it, go ahead. I will tell you that the SAT score has no bearing on our understanding of your preparation for our engineering programs, but rather a rigorous high school curriculum that includes rigorous mathematics and science courses, specifically calculus, is going to be much more predictive of an element of your preparation for the engineering program. All that said, preparation for an engineering program does not dictate an admission decision because an overwhelming percentage of our application pool is fully prepared and ready to go into our process. It has, to be quite honest with you, your chances of admission have nothing to do with your academics, unless they're really bad, right? You got really bad academics, it's probably going to affect your chance of admission. But most of you have great academics. It's much more about just the opportunities that you're going to bring to our campus as far as your background, and that's what we're trying to understand. Nico Medina is asking the next question. Should we be using complete sentences or just a few words to directly answer the short questions? Angie, I'm going to let you take this one. And the short questions, you might want to define what Nico's meaning by that.
Yeah. So if I understand Nico's question correctly, the short questions are just those fun ones,
The quick
the
takes.
fun ones, yeah, the quick takes at the end where it's like, what's your favorite snack? If you could have any roommate in the world, who would it be? Things like that. They're called quick takes for a reason. They don't need to be more than a word for many of you. A word is perfectly fine. Maybe even a couple words is fine. Don't feel like you need to say, I'd love to roommate with Hermione Granger because the XYZ, or something like
There's a
that.
certain limit on the space anyway.
Yeah, I think so too. So one or two words is all really you need to put on there. And those questions are really just a fun way to break up the stress of the application on your end, but also just for us to have a little fun and get to know you a little more too.
And your ideal future roommate does not affect your chances of admission. I'll be really, really clear about that. Or your favorite snack, unless you choose something really disgusting. Of course, we're not going to tell you what that is, but these are fun opportunities. That's all we're looking to understand. I'm going to combo the next two questions because they are related and can be answered. And Becky's nodding, so she's going to take it. But another Nico is answering this question, and Nusha, about the supplemental questions. What's the difference between the three supplementals? No such thing as three supplementals, but we'll get back to that. Like what kind of aspect, content directions you'd expect to see, which is also asking what we want, which we've already answered that question. How should I approach answering supplemental questions for computer science majors? So, Becky, have at it.
Sure. So there are two supplementals for engineering. So on the common application,
Supplemental short answer questions to be clear for
Yes.
everyone who hasn't touched them yet.
Yes. So there is an essay that you have to write, and then the university has one singular short answer question, and then Viterbi has two supplemental short answer questions. So those two short answer questions, and this, like Paul said, this kind of goes along with how would you approach answering the supplemental essay question, supplemental short answer questions. And my advice is to answer the question, right? So you read a question, you reflect on how it applies to you, or, one of them is of the 14 grand challenges, what do you think is the most important and why? So reflect, what do you think is the most important? And I'm going to say they're all important, or they wouldn't be the National Academy of Engineering's 14 grand challenges. So they're all important. So there is no wrong answer. Reflect which one is the most important to you and why, and then answer the question. Sometimes students want to kind of fit in answers or information into their short answer, into their essay that does not actually answer the question. It's information you want us to know, and so you like squeeze it in here and there, but then it makes your answer not really relevant to the question that you're being asked. We have to go back and be like, wait, how does this apply to the question? I don't understand. Where are they going with this? And then you spend, a lot of time trying to understand where you're coming from or what you're trying to say. So my recommendation, read the question, reflect, answer it. That's what we're looking for.
Great, thank you. And then specifically with the computers, you shouldn't have any different types of answers based on any particular major to specifically answer that question that Nisha was asking for computer science. we're going to say this a lot today. I can already tell. Um, there's a general thread to some of these questions I'm seeing, which is like, what are you looking for? And to be clear, we're not looking for anything in particular other than to get to know you. So you're going to see us say that over and over again because you're asking questions in different ways when really this answer is the same. We're not looking for a specific answer. We're not looking for a specific set of content. We're looking for you, as Becky said, answer the question, which is we can't tell you how many applications we read where the application is so convoluted and overthought and overmolded and over edited that it just doesn't make sense. So please do that. And there's nothing that would say one major answers a question differently than another major. You're human beings. We are human beings, and we're filling a school and a classroom with human beings. How do we help understand what those human beings are like? That's what we're trying to understand. Are certain human beings better than other human beings? No, and we're not trying to establish who's best. We're trying to figure out who's going to be a good group here that would not only be academically prepared first, but also contribute to our community and add value in different ways. And you all can add value in different ways. Our decision process is really about the group as a collective. How are we going to get this group to be a dynamic group that's going to be really unique, if that makes sense? Not making individual admission decisions one by one, but how are we going to collectively make an admission decision on the group? Becky, were you trying to jump back in? Sorry.
I was just gonna say, I mean,
Oh, we're getting another one. Sorry.
excuse me, hold please. Um,
I was going to say one thing
Sorry,
that
that was
we, a
loud for
lot of
everybody.
times,
So if that was loud for me, let me explain what's going on.
oh,
It happened at the beginning of this. Before we were recording, LA County received a emergency alert on phones and devices everywhere for mass evacuation warning. Uh, we determined that it was a false one, and then another alert just went out right now confirming it was false. So that's just what happened. In case anybody just heard all that, I apologize. Brooke, I apologize too.
oh, actually, Becky, go ahead. You were going to.
oh, no, I was just gonna say, I mean, while we're reading these essays, the things we are looking for, an answered question, your authentic voice, a well-written essay or short answer question. And when I say well-written, I mean grammatically correct with a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? Like a thought process that starts and ends. And so that is
Not Shakespearean iambic pentameter.
because my brain, I'm a math and science person. My brain doesn't work like that.
Mhm.
So there are like those things, but those are sort of bare minimum, can you write it? Can you answer a question? Can you write a short answer? And then within whatever content you put into that short answer question, we get to know you as a person and as a student.
Brooke.
Yes, I like what Becky said. And also, I was just thinking about how we often tell students that if you're applying to a certain degree within engineering, we don't expect you to have experience in that area. So, writing, you don't need to answer the questions
Yeah.
as if you are a computer scientist or a biomedical engineer already. We know you're in high school, so we take that into account. So, hopefully that
Yeah.
helps too.
Short version of a lot of what we're saying is don't overthink this.
Yeah.
Don't overthink this, and there's no way to get a better grade than somebody else.
Right.
That's the main stuff. Okay, back to our question. Sorry. Alana Bank is asking, and Brooke, I'll have you take the lead on this one. Can you change majors as a first year student?
Yes, Alana, actually, that's something that we tell students in our presentations that once you are admitted to the engineering school as a first year student, you have the ability to change your major within the engineering school. So, most of our students, their first semester will take an intro to, whatever major they selected coming in, intro to electrical engineering. And so that gives you exposure to that major. But oftentimes students come in thinking they want to do one thing and decide that they might be a better fit in a different area, and that is okay. So every student has mandatory advising sessions with an advisor, and you would just let that advisor know that you want to switch, and they would help you make that switch and make sure that you take the classes that you need. And typically, as long as you switch within the first 3 semesters, you should be fine graduating on time. I've heard of students switching majors later and still graduating in 4 years. So there is flexibility. And I always consider that one of our Viterbi advantages, that students have that flexibility to do that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Next up, Bella Avila is asking, it's kind of this question we've already answered, but Angie, if there's any other take you can take on this one, what advice would you give for writing the supplemental essay? Because I think this is a larger question about just writing in the application in general, which we talked about a lot.
Mhm. Yeah, so again, just to clarify, the supplemental questions are not essays, they're short answers. In fact, there's word limits. You can only write about 250 words, give or take. And so, I mean, as we've kind of already mentioned, the biggest piece of advice is just be yourself. We're not giving specific advice, not because we don't want to, but because if we say one thing, all of you are going to take that and go with it. So just put in there what you want us to learn about you, what you want us to learn about your passions, your interests, your accomplishments, challenges, anything like that. I always tell students also that, if you've already mentioned something in one place in the application, you don't need to repeat it. We're going to see it again. We see all your application.
Yeah.
And if there is something that you want to go into more depth where you mentioned it in one part of the application and you didn't get a chance to explain it, then absolutely go ahead and go in depth into it. But we see your entire application. So use those spaces wisely. Just be yourself. Let us know what you want us to know about you.
I'm going to flip this question for everybody in our panel. What are common things that you see that you're like, oh, I wish they didn't do that? Like, what are some common mistakes that people make where it's like it's the opposite of what we're just telling them to do? Like, what are some tangible things that happen where it is the actual opposite of what we just said? Because I think it's a little daunting for us to tell a 17-year-old, just be yourself. And so how do they manifest that when they're just trying to be the best they can be? And so where does that flip without them knowing it? And how does that manifest on our side of examples that you've read in the past?
One comes to mind for me is that sometimes students don't actually answer the question that's being
Yeah.
asked. And it's like they have this something they want to say, and they don't really read the question. So
They work hard
an
on
ex
representing some sort of version of like, I'm
yeah.
such a great mechanical engineer. And then they went in a whole different direction. And the question was,
How are you going to contribute?
how are you going to contribute to your student
Yeah.
body? I'm like, because you're a brilliant mechanical. That's weird. Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
So I would say just really read, like Becky was saying previously, really reading the question and reflecting on the question. Um,
Yeah.
and I know that you probably think most students are going to overthink it and think about it a lot, and just try to keep it simple and read the question and answer what we're asking, and
Mhm.
you should be okay.
I have two thoughts that students just need to be careful with.
Mm.
One is sort of being super creative, writing poems, doing something like that to answer the question, because when sometimes it can work really well and it's interesting to kind of read something that's not like in an essay form, but it can also kind of make it a challenge to understand the beginning, the middle, and the end of your answer to the question or how it pertains to the question. So be careful with that. The second one is humor or inside jokes or something like that. Well, a student may write something that they think is really funny. It's an inside joke with them and their friends, but when it's written on a piece of paper and someone across the country who's never met you before and doesn't know your sense of humor, doesn't know your inside jokes, well, if you were telling us this in person, we might laugh. Reading it on a piece of paper can, or on a computer screen, it may not come across the right way. And
Right.
so again, while it could work, it could also kind of backfire. And so in some of those situations, maybe having someone who doesn't know the joke or who isn't part of, that, whatever you're trying to make funny or humorous, read it and see what they think, because it may work and it might not. So just to be careful if you're trying to kind of make those answers a little bit more creative versus just like an essay, like a written out.
I have also two things, but real quick. Number one, don't feel the need to be too technical, which I know is hard to say to engineering students because you are technical in nature, but the people reading your applications, us, we're not engineers. We know things we can Google too, but sometimes if you are too technical, it distracts. And the second thing, and I know it sounds crazy, don't confess to crimes or things that you've done that are um against your school's policies, because this did happen a few years ago. A student said, I hacked my school system just
As
to
a as
change my
and
grade.
I think he was trying to do it
Yeah,
as proof of like his
how good he is.
how good
Yeah,
he is at coding, and we're like,
yeah,
you break the law.
yeah. So
And
don't.
didn't we contact the school?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, it didn't end well.
So that last one of Angie's is an application that stands out because Paul and I both know exactly which one she's talking about, and
Exactly.
not in a good way.
Yeah, we don't we always remember the ones that stand out, but not in a good way. Um, did you have two? I'm sorry, did I step on you or something?
Those were the two,
Oh,
but
sorry.
I'll never forget that one, that last one.
Yeah, yeah.
I like
This
the, oh, sorry, go ahead.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say the technical part that Angie was talking about. I've had a couple applications where I learn a lot about this project that they did or some aspect of this equation that they figured out, the student figured out, but then I read the whole essay and I learned nothing about the student. So
Yes.
just remember you're tying that, whatever great thing you did, we want to get to know you. And so
Also,
you can tie those together, but make sure you add that
exactly,
in there.
exactly. You do not use writing opportunities to enforce technical prowess or ability. We can ascertain your preparation for our programs via your curriculum and grades. Because of the alternate, like let's say you don't have good grades, well then where did all this stuff come from, right? That's a whole other. Don't make us ask questions in the application.
Right.
On the other side of
Also,
that,
oh yeah.
on the other side of that, there's many experiences that I've had reading applications where I can smell it's not really accurate. And
Mm,
so while we may not be engineers, I do have a pretty good amount of experience in this. And also, you don't know when we involve faculty in the review of your application. And I've had many opportunities where a faculty member said, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. You don't want to go down that road. So don't. It's your best opportunity. The one that I will bring up on my own is honestly probably if there's parents listening, it's probably the parents' fault. And I mean that with good intentions and nicely. Parents, I think, do a lot to try to help students in shaping applications, but as a
mhm,
result of that, they might reduce or completely remove the student's voice by
mhm.
overcomplicating and overflowering a bunch of different things. Um, I've said it, I mentioned it before about maybe this essay was far too edited. And I will also tell you, probably bet you're on your 10th version of your essay, but you haven't written the supplemental versions yet. So you're going to have two different writing styles by the time you submit your application. And that's kind of a weird thing. Like, what's your actual writing style? If they're reading in different voices, which is something that I find interesting when we go through an application. And to the point of that's where authenticity is key. You're seeking to be authentic. And I kind of, this is my fun little one, but it is it's a it's a tip of an iceberg to other problems. I kind of doubt that you speak using onomatopoeia. Like if you're writing something and it starts out with thwack, uh, how many essays I've read that start with thwack or crack or whatever, and like there went my chance to be a professional football player, and then it starts talking about how something else goes on the road. I get the visual ideas of it. That's great, but like let's keep some of that stuff in check because I kind of doubt that's how you are writing normally. I think Becky uses the story of if I have to get a thesaurus out to understand what you're saying, I have a feeling you don't understand what you're saying.
Yeah, because I know, you're 17, you don't talk like that. Like in your normal day to day. And while you want to be a little bit more professional in how you're writing, because these are, applications and things like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, if we have to pull out the thesauruses, I can't even say the word, to understand what you're even trying to comprehend. We all have college degrees, multiple college degrees, so it's like we know big words, but if we're having to look up some, we know that you looked it up too, and because that's not how you speak when you're
Yeah.
just friends
There's a
or your
spectrum. There's text message language and thesauruses, and you
you
gotta
want to be in between.
be in between those. All right, thank you. As a side, but I hope that affects a lot of our questions that we're going to get. Ramses, next question. By the way, this is a reminder, everybody, go down there and upvote. If you want something to come to the top, or if you want to skip over the ones that we've already questioned, or excuse me, answered. I'm so out of whack today. If you want to skip over the ones we've already answered, upvote the other ones to the top so we can get to them. So please do that down there. You're in charge of this session. Ramsey's asking, are there any differences in the application process for out-of-state students compared to in-state students? No, there's no difference. We are a private institution. We have no obligation for out-of-state, in-state, or international students. So no difference between out-of-state, in-state, or international students. We are considering everyone equally. Amy Z is asking a question about, do you look at both the weighted and unweighted GPA? Neither. We are calculating your GPA independently and calculating how that's going to work. The best scenario that you should understand is that we're looking at your unweighted GPA with considerations that we will make for the level of rigor that you were enrolled in and successful in at your school based on the rigor that's available to your school. For lack of a better term, we're not comparing you to other types of schools that where they have different classes available. We're understanding your ability to be successful in the level of rigor that's available to you. So as long as you're enrolled in highly rigorous courses at your school and you're getting A's and B's, preferably more A's than B's in those highly rigorous classes, you're fine. So that's what we're trying to understand. And there is no such thing as a good GPA or a bad GPA. The answer is, are you taking hard classes? Are you getting A's and B's, more A's than B's? Then you're on the right track and prepared for the curriculum that we're offering. Ian is asking for the YUSC supplemental question. Do we need to address more than one major if we really only want to pursue one major and we don't necessarily have a second major choice? No, it just says if you read the question, and most of these answers are in the question that you're asking. If you read the question, it says feel free to address these other elements, meaning like we're trying to give you some ideas. The university is trying to give you some ideas of things to talk about. So why USC or what your academic pursuits are going to be. Tell us what you want to study and why. That's the translated version of that question. What do you want to study and why? And how do you plan on doing that at USC? That's this type of question that we're looking at. Nico Medina's back. Question 2 for Nico Medina. Way to go, Nico. Is it a good idea to reach out to my regional admission officer just to establish a connection? If so, what should I say to them? I think you're answering your question in your question. If you got nothing to say to them, don't say anything. No, you don't just send an email to waste someone's time to say hi, because I will tell you, I get a lot of those emails and I don't know what to do with them. We do not practice demonstrated interest. There is nothing counting towards you or counting against you because you've been in love with us for longer than others. And also, by the way, how many of you sent those to anyone else? Like, just don't worry about it. If you have a question or you need something, go for it. And you can ask them, you can ask us. To be quite honest with you, if they don't know the answer, they're going to send it to us. And if we don't know the answer, we're going to send it to them. We all work together here. We can all track all this together. So it's not about tracking points. It's about making sure we're helping you when you need help. Becky, you were going to say something?
Oh no, I just, I get this question all the time, especially from people in my personal life who have high school students. And like, if you don't have a question, do not email us, just because, we're getting so many emails. And so I'll get an email from a student and I'm reading it and I was like, okay, where's the question? Where's the question? Like, what am I answering? And then there is no question and I don't know how to respond. I'm just like, okay, great. Thank you. Like, I don't know what to say. So if you have a question, like Paul said, absolutely email us, email your regional counselor, email someone, because we want to answer all of your questions. But like he said, we do not practice demonstrated interest. So we're not keeping track of them.
Great questions, everybody. Once again, a reminder, get your questions in. We still got 25-ish minutes to answer questions, and go in and go ahead and keep upvoting to push the ones to the top that you want to see us answer. Chase Brown is next on our list here. How early, I'm going to have this go to Angie. How early can engineering students get involved in research opportunities and how competitive is it?
You can get involved as early as your first semester at USC. There are many opportunities for freshmen to join research projects. In terms of competitiveness, I don't want to quantify it or say a percentage, but there's a lot. So it's not going to be like competitive in the sense that I can't find anything. It's more of a matter of looking for the opportunities, I think is what it really comes down to. And we'll plug in Curve, the Center for Undergraduate Research in Viterbi Engineering. You can apply for that. And if accepted, you'll get matched to a research position. And many of our students just go about other informal ways, connecting with their professors in office hours. But there are labs taking freshmen, taking undergrads, they specifically make space for undergrads in these research labs. So it's not just limited to master's and PhD students.
I've never known of an undergraduate student who wanted to do research who wasn't able to do research. It's here for you and available, and the sheer
Mhm.
volume of research and the interest from our faculty members to get engaged with undergraduate students is important. I cannot comment on the likelihood of you getting it in your first year, although many students do, but it kind of depends on a variety of factors that were out of control. I wouldn't say it's competitive. I would say that there are different types of opportunities at different times, and I'm sure that if you want to do research, you will definitely do research in your undergraduate years. How Michael N is answering a question, and oh, Angie's jumping in right there with the answer in the chat before we even get there. How does need-based financial aid work, and how does it apply differently based for in-state, out-of-state students? So, Michael, Angie just put a link in the chat for you to read more about financial aid. I recommend you read that page. They'll answer it better than anything we have here, and there's contact information for the financial aid office if you have specific financial aid questions relative to you. Unfortunately, we cannot answer those questions because there is what I would refer to as a firewall between financial aid documentation and information and admission because we are a need blind institution for domestic students. What that means is that we are reviewing applications without having any understanding of a student's ability to pay, which is a good thing for you. We're not like deciding should we admit this person because they can pay for it or not. And once we admit students, and if you've applied for financial aid, the university commits to meeting 100% of your USC determined need. And so what that means is that when a student is in need of a certain amount, they were going to get that amount through a combination of loans, work study, and grant, with the overwhelming majority being a grant. Grant is free money, money you don't need to pay back. Loans are money that you need to pay back, but we minimize that as much as possible. And work study is money that you get through a part-time job and get paid on a biweekly basis. It does not vary for in-state, out-of-state tuition. Similar to what we answered before, we are a private institution. We have no distinction between in-state or out-of-state students. The other thing I'll add on to this for anyone who's going to ask, financial aid, need-based financial aid, international students are not eligible for need-based financial aid. That is not a USC thing. That is a federal government thing for the United States. So just as a heads up, that's happening, and everyone is eligible to apply for scholarships. So that is that. That's a quick answer. I hope I handled that well. Zach and Becky, I'll have you answer Zach's question. Can you study abroad as an engineering major?
Yes, you can. And there are lots of different ways to do it. And so one way I describe engineering students is you are a USC student who just happens to study engineering. So you can go through USC study abroad programs. You want to go away for a semester, you want to go away for a summer, you want to go away for the year. Through USC study abroad opportunities, you can do that. You just want to work closely with your academic advisor to make sure that courses will transfer. You don't get behind in your engineering curriculum. You know, you kind of save general education courses or writing courses for those semesters. So you can do that. Then the Viterbi School has many study abroad opportunities. I kind of call them international experiences. There are exchange programs with universities around the country where one of our students goes and studies there. Their students come and study with us. Students have done internships abroad in the summer. We have classes that have an international component to it. So you take the course in the spring semester. It's called sort of like Maymester. You know, when the semester ends, your class goes abroad for a couple of weeks, or there's something called fall lead where your class goes abroad in August, and then you get back to campus and you take your course together. There are student organizations like Engineers Without Borders that have an international component to it. So there's lots of different ways that students can study abroad or go abroad or intern abroad. And you are not restricted to just one. I know students who have done Viterbi study abroad experience, and they're part of Engineers Without Borders, and they had an international internship. So lots of different ways that you can kind of have those international experiences as an engineering student through the Viterbi School or through the university.
Great. Thank you very much. The next question is from Ian Hettenbach. Do multiple AOs, and I've learned now that the colloquial term that high school students use for admission officers is AOs, which I think is so fun. Read each student's application. FYI, we don't use those terms, so I don't know. Angie, do you use those terms, AOs? No, this is
No.
all like pre-assigned from the outside world to us. Like we have like acronyms and stuff. Yes, multiple people read every student's application, and there's multiple sets of eyes in multiple ways. There's not one way in which an application is ever processed and reviewed. One application could go through a few different people. One application could go through multiple people and multiple committees of multiple people. It really just kind of depends on the application and the situation at hand, but there's never one person reading and making a decision. I want to be clear about that. There's never one person reading and making a decision, and that is by design. And that's important to understand. Eloy, which I believe is how I'm pronouncing that. I apologize if I'm not getting that correctly. I don't actually can't tell whether there's I's or L's in here. So there, I'm a little confused by this question. Whoever would like to jump in on this, um, please let me know. So the wording is weird. It's about the YUSC appears the School of Engineering prop to my contributions, maybe distinct from others. It would seem as though they're overthinking these questions and they're thinking they're the same. They are distinctly different questions. If you can't understand that, I don't know how to help you. Can anyone else jump in here to see?
No, oh, sorry, Brooke, go ahead.
Okay. I well, what I notice a lot of students with the engineering grand challenges get confused because we're asking you to pick from one of the 14 grand challenges and tell us why that one is most important to you. So um, you don't have to specifically talk about a project that you're working on. You mentioned that, does this mean I need to work on this? Mention the same project in both of these. You don't have to mention a project in either of these. The first question is what kind of contribution you would make at USC and Viterbi. Am I freezing?
No, you're good.
Okay. And so that could be a number of things. It doesn't have to be academically or a project that you worked on. You can tie it to something like that, but not necessary. My advice would be that you don't talk about the same two things in both questions because we want to get to know different parts of you. And I'm sure you have different aspects. But again, that grand challenge question is picking one of the grand challenges and telling us why it's important for you. So that's up to you how you decide to talk about that. Did
There's a
that make
point that
sense?
Angie made earlier that I want to
Yeah,
reiterate that might help this as well. We are reading the entire application.
right.
So
Yeah,
these aren't, I think sometimes people overthink it because they think we're like in a bubble only reading one part of this.
right.
So quite literally, it'll read like this page has this question on, then that question's right
Mhm.
behind it, and then that question, and then that question, and we're reading it in line.
Yeah.
So you can say like, as I mentioned in that other question, da, 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 like that all makes sense. Like you can do that. So it's all one complete book about you.
Mhm.
And that's how we're reading it. It's a book about you, and we need to understand more about it. And there's answers to questions. That's it. I hope that that helps. Again, we've got about 15 minutes left and we've dropped on our upvotes dramatically. So if you don't care and we're just going to go through, we'll just go through. But if you do care about certain questions being answered and we seem to keep hitting the same thread of don't overthink these questions. So I'm going to rely on you, the audience, to pull up questions that you want to get answered to the top, and we'll just keep doing that. So please hit that as much as possible. Nico Medina. Oh no, Nico got whoa. Nico was about to answer your question, and then you got bumped down. But we might get there. So just I was always going to award you something, but I'm sorry. I'll put it away. Anukriti is asking, what are some examples of cross-departmental projects between Viterbi and other USC schools? I'm going to have you Google that, buddy, because I don't think it's best for us to talk about it. There's plenty of different opportunities for research. Go to viterbiadmission.usc.edu/academics. You can learn about lots of different opportunities. You can also learn about our student organizations and the projects that they work on. There's so much to talk about. It's going to be kind of a waste of time for us to read a brochure to you right now rather than answer the questions that you have about this process. Ethan, PJ, nope, sorry. Farah just won another one. I should actually click that before I do this. Farah is asking, are the letters of recommendation of significance in the application? Letters of recommendation are not required. I want to be clear about that. Because that they're not required, they're not significant. Anything you put in the application is significant and that we will read it and review it. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but I want to be clear about this. We only require the teacher counselor report, which is part of the common application. Many people refer to that as letter of recommendation, but we do not ask for letters of recommendation on top of that. Personally, I will tell you, it gets really hard to hear how great you are more than 3 times by people that just happen to know you when we have all this other academic stuff. So, not necessarily too significant, but again, I don't know your situation. Maybe there's a part of you in your life that requires that aspect for us to help that view or that aspect or that input from someone else to help us understand you. So I don't want to say don't do it. I want you to make decisions about how you want to put your best foot forward. That said, having your physics teacher tell us that you were in their class and you did well is a waste of everyone's time when I know that because of the transcript. And trust me, that's all your physics teacher is going to say if you ask them for a letter of recommendation. They were in my class and they got this grade. That's kind of it. That said, maybe like, I don't know, an activities leader or a mentor or someone that's done worked with you in different ways. Maybe they can give us something else that's interesting to you. Those are cool things. But, think about that. It's an individual case by case situation. Ethan, PJ, how long would you say it takes an admission officer at USC to review a student's application? It depends on how old and how long that admission officer has been at USC, I guess I would say. Because when you're starting out, you take a long while, and when you're like me, you're really old and you go pretty fast. I don't know, Becky, what are your thoughts?
I was just to say, yeah, it depends on a lot of things. It depends on the application that we're reading.
That's a better answer, yeah.
There are questions that pop up where now we got to go look here. We need to, confirm something that hopefully is maybe something's going on in the application and we want to confirm it. And so there's a letter of rec. Okay, let's read that. Okay, we're doing this. Sometimes they're pretty straightforward, and like Paul said, it doesn't take very long to read through them. But then there's some where Brooke's reading a file and then she has a question on something. So she reaches out to me and is like, this, I am confused about this. What do you think? Am I like, would you read it the same way? Maybe we reach out to the admission counselor, your admission officer, your territory manager, the person who's responsible for all the applications from your high school. We're like, hey, we have questions about the curriculum at this high school because I don't even know what this class is. It just says math. Well, what kind of math is that? And then they know your school, they know your curriculum. So we're talking to them. So, some applications we can read pretty quickly. Some take a little bit more time, a little bit more eyes, a little bit more questions between admission officers in the central admission office and us. So it really depends on the application.
That's a much better answer than what I said because it's true. I mean, it's true. It's like I don't know what I'm diving into until I get into it, and sometimes I have questions because it's poorly written. Sometimes I have questions because I'm like, I don't know if I can get all this stuff quite well. Maybe I need to refer to some. Yeah, so it's very very case by case.
Am I in the zone or am I like being distracted by fires?
That's a whole other thing. That's a whole other thing. Am I in the zone? Are we this week? Yeah, with all these distractions and stimuli going around right now, like, yeah, there's a lot of things I haven't gotten done this week. Josephine is asking, does USC admit by major? I noticed that the first and second choice majors could be ones from different schools. For example, one from Viterbi and another from CLAS. So yes and no, Josephine. In order to apply to USC, you must choose a first choice major because that's how your application is going to be reviewed. To be clear, you're only applying to one major at USC and you will only be admitted to one major at USC. The second choice major is in case the first choice major is unable to admit you, then you can be considered for the second choice major. When you're applying to the Viterbi School, you must apply to the Viterbi School as a first choice major in order to be considered. If the Viterbi School cannot consider you, in other words, if we cannot consider you for admission, for whatever reason, then the university will consider you for your second choice major. And our recommendation is that you do not list a Viterbi School major as your second choice major because you already were considered. You want to be considered by something else if you have an interest in that discipline. If you don't, then don't list it or leave it blank because you also be considered for the university overall as open or undecided. That said, we're not necessarily, when we get in the engineering majors, we're not saying this student's more prepared for aerospace engineering versus electrical engineering versus mechanical engineering versus computer engineering because there's no such way in which you could be more prepared for any of those coming out of your high school curriculum. So the types of stuff that we're talking about, we say on our website about being prepared for admission in the engineering schools across all engineering and computer science majors. That's the standard. There's not one thing that you need for one major versus another. We just need to see that you're engaged, high levels of math and science across the 4 years, high levels of rigor. We need to see calculus. Those are the important elements. That's pretty much what you need to do. There's more on our website about what we need to see from a ability to contribute to community and your involvement in the activities and stuff like that, but nothing specific. We just want to know what you've been doing, and everybody has a different role. So there you go. Okay. Michael N. How well can you balance between what the Viterbi School gives you and extracurriculars? In other words, how well would I be able to pursue other interests while in school? Is there also the ability to pursue double majors? And if so, how would someone be able to achieve that goal? Becky.
Sure.
I think you can answer that question simply.
Okay.
More than
Yeah.
likely.
Yes, you can do things outside of the School of Engineering. I think that's what draws a lot of students because even though you're an engineer, that's not all you are. So double majors you can do. It might take you longer than 4 years. So just think about that. The engineering curriculum is a 4-year program. And then if you had a bunch of business classes or a bunch of music classes, it could take you longer than 4 years. About 40% of our students pursue minors, usually in things outside of engineering. So business, music, theater, photography, languages, whatever it might be. You can also get involved in things outside of engineering. So you're a USC student who just happens to take engineering classes. You can be part of student organizations outside of the School of Engineering. You can get involved in activities outside of the School of Engineering. The number one most popular major on the USC marching band is engineers. So you can be a USC student and get involved in all these extracurricular activities. You are not like confined to engineering opportunities.
Great. Thank you. Angie, were you gonna say something?
Oh, no, sorry.
Phoebe is asking, are second semester senior grades evaluated? They're not evaluated for admission because you will have been receiving an admission decision before you're done with your senior year's second semester. So that's impossible unless you have a time machine, which we could probably figure that out. But that does not mean you're off the hook because every single admission decision is a conditional offer of admission, considering that you maintain what's the wording? Consistent academic progress or
Successfully complete the
the
courses.
courses that you've done. You
Yeah,
can't get senioritis. You can't say, I'm admitted, I'm done with this place, I'm out of here, because everything's conditional. We ask you for your last semester of grades, and you must submit those. And I hate to say this, this has been happening a little bit more frequently in recent years than in my entire experience as a professional admission person. More and more of your peers are just thinking you can let it go, and then we can rescind your admission. We'll take it away and not allow you to enroll. When I say we, I mean the university. It's not an individual decision by us. And I will also tell you that I've been involved in that decision process, and it is not one that people take lightly. We take it very, very seriously. And I'm also not talking about like, oh, you randomly got a C in a class. I'm talking about like, don't mess up, because that can happen, and it has happened. And most recently, just this year, there was one that was really, really troubling. Um, so it yes, they're considered, but not for the admission process. It's just to allow you to enroll, to move forward. And you don't want to do that. If you've been doing this right, you're in your hardest classes in your senior year. That is critical preparation for the harder classes that are waiting for you in college. I'm not saying you need to go, you should still have fun your senior year because it's your senior year, but this is preparation to the next work, which is even going to get harder. So just keep that in mind. All right, we got 5 minutes left. And in those 5 minutes, the upvoting has kind of died down a little bit. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to ask my staff to pick a question that they can see inside of the open 37 questions that we have left and find something that is unique or something that you believe needs attention that will draw to it. I will handle two questions real quick as you guys are finding those questions. First one is from Ginny, that's at the top. Will there be any major changes in the next 4 years that we as prospective students should know about? I cannot predict the future. I have no idea what the next 4 years are going to do. There is nothing planned necessarily. There's nothing moving forward. Now, there are things in the works as far as like we might have some new majors that we're talking about, but nothing's official until it goes through curricular review. So we can't talk about those until we actually release those, but that might happen. We're looking at a couple different areas to play around with and do some cool stuff with, but that involves very careful consideration by faculty committees. And I've been involved in some of that review process, and I'm excited about what we're doing. I think something that we know that's going to happen in the next 4 years, there's two kind of really big things that are happening in LA. The World Cup will be here in LA, and also the Olympics will be here in LA. So that and USC will be in the mix as far as a big part of the world stage. Because if you don't know, the Olympic Coliseum is our football stadium. That's where the Olympics are held. That's the opening ceremony. That's the closing ceremony, and USC will be a big part of that situation. So that's some cool stuff that I think that people can look forward to for the next 4 years. Other than that, I don't think there's a specific thing unless you guys want to jump in on something that I might be missing. But no, we got our typical plan as we move forward. The last question I'll answer is Nico Medina because he's been trying to get this question in and it keeps losing to the fight. So I felt bad for him. And Nico Medina, you got 3 questions in. Way to go, buddy. That's a world record. Are dual enrollment credits, in other words, taking college classes at a local university or community college, accepted to waive or skip classes? Nico, it is a great question. It is possible that that can happen. It is highly unlikely that it will. So just keep that in mind. It is possible, but highly unlikely that will count towards university, towards your college degree, because they are technically college courses taken before high school graduation. And in some situations, if they're counted as high school credit, there's a lot of ifs in there. It's possible you bring in a class or two that might count towards your degree, but not necessarily as many as you think you have. And I want to be really, really clear about that. Many times, running start programs or upward bound programs or any other programs that get you going into college early promise you this like easier college experience. And that might be true, not for engineering majors and probably only at that college that you were taking the classes in or the state system. And that's not, neither of us is us. So that's something to keep in mind. All right. Who's got the question? What do they want to answer? Yeah, Angie, go for it.
Okay, I have two, if I may, also.
Yeah, go for it.
Someone, which is, we don't get questions a lot from homeschooled students, but I know someone in there did ask a question. Is there
Yeah.
additional things required from homeschool students?
I think it was the
And
very
there,
first question. It popped up
yeah,
and I think it got sunk
and
down.
then
So
it
I'm glad you grabbed it.
disappeared. So there are some like specific things you need to follow as a homeschool student. I'm putting the link in the chat, which explains it much better than I can in my own words.
And there's
It's
specifics you
just
need to pay attention to. So that link is good.
exactly. Yeah. So take a look at that link. And then there's also an admission counselor in the Central Office of Admission who works specifically with homeschooled students and non-traditional schools. So if any of you have questions, you can reach out to Rachel. But yes, there are a couple additional things that homeschool students need to submit. And kind of in the same regard, a couple of international students were asking, how are they reviewed differently? You're not reviewed differently, international students, but there are also additional documents that you need to submit as an international student. We'll put the link as well in the chat. For everyone, the most important thing is get your common application in by the deadline. And all documents and supplemental things can come in after, but the most important things, submit your common app by January 15th. And then international students, I'll put something in the chat. But yes, you do need to submit additional things, not required for admission, but things that actually, let me stop speaking out of term, but take a look at that website that I have to put in there.
There are documents that
There
international
are,
students need to submit that domestic students do not, and there are
correct.
instructions that are very specific. Yes,
And
thank you.
also, undocumented students, you are not international students, also to clarify.
Yes, if there are any undocumented students in the audience, there are links in those same links that tell you a little bit more about being a DACA recipient or any other types of undocumented students. So please take that in mind. Brooke, do you have a question?
There's one from Demas. Is there any part where I can send CV, portfolio, or journal publication? And the answer is no. So everything we want to see is in the Common App. If you have something special that you want to mention, try to work it into the Common Application questions. There is an additional information section where you can add certain things, link to a publication, something like that. But no, we don't accept any additional materials.
Don't make us read more than we're already reading.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you, the real thing is, I'm sure you can describe these things or synthesize this information into the application. That's helpful. If you're unable to do those things, that might be an issue. So put it in the app. There was another question, sorry to on top of that, there was another question I can't remember. I saw it and I forgot where it went and who was asking it, so I apologize. I can't call you out. Oh, Derek Sanderson, the activities
Yeah.
section on the application is limited. How can I expand? You can't. So do your best to get it in there and help us understand. Now, that said, if there's things that you're not able to get across, there is a question, and this might goes to Brooke's question as well. There's a question in our application that says, is there anything else we should know about you? And you can feel free to put stuff in there, but that is not an opportunity to copy and paste a journal publication like that, please, or research synopsis. We don't need that. We just want to know more about you. Thanks, Brooke. Becky?
Yeah, so I marked two to answer. They're from the same person and they're kind of about just sort of timelines. So Samira. And if any of you have already applied and you applied early action, this is just sort of the timeline. So for students who applied early action, some students will be admitted early, and then of those students that were admitted early, only some students will be invited for scholarship. So you can be admitted early action without being a scholarship finalist. And then the other thing is, if you did apply early action and you are not admitted, and you are deferred to regular decision, you do need to go in and just fill out a quick form saying that you still want to be considered for regular decision. So it won't be automatic that you'll be rolled over. We do need you to say, yes, please still consider me, for you to be considered for regular decision. So I just wanted to get those sort of timeline in.
That was great. And thank you all for finding those questions. I think those were critical bits of information that we had not yet covered, and I really, really appreciate that. Angie found another one.
No, just real quick, because I did see someone in here. There might be a couple of transfer students in here.
Oh,
I'm sorry to say, we should have said this earlier in the
yeah.
beginning. Everything we've shared today really only applies to first year applicants applying directly from high school or people who haven't attended another college or university after high school graduation. So if you're a transfer student, this probably wasn't the best for you, and we'll have another one maybe later on, but I'm sorry, a lot of what we talked about today doesn't apply.
Yeah, anybody that's applying as a transfer student, if you're in this pool, you can go to our website and sign up for one of our virtual transfer advisement and information sessions. I recommend you do that and ignore everything you heard today. It has not very different application process, very different, and a lot of what we said could be confusing. So please check that out and move forward. Any first year applicants, ignore everything we just said about transfer. That's going to confuse you. So don't look in each other's pot. It's going to be really weird. So just stick to what you're going to. Um, Anything else, y'all? Okay. Uh, so to wrap this up, if you were here in the beginning and saw us all being crazy, I apologize again. I think I know what happened, and I'm going to lash that person 40 times. No, I'm kidding. But I think I know what happened. So I apologize for that, and thank you for sticking with us. I hope that this was helpful for you. Uh, the deadline to apply for first year admission is January 15th. So we're coming up on it next week. If you haven't started working on your application, I recommend you do it. Okay. It's got to get that in. The common application needs to be submitted by January 15th. Additional supporting documents, if they're not available at that time, can be submitted later. So things like transcripts or that teacher counselor report or letters of recommendation that you choose to submit, those can come in later, just not too much later. The point being is that when people start to review your application, if they're not in there, then you're going to get an email saying we can't move on without you submitting this stuff. So just get that in. Once you apply, you'll have access to your applicant portal and you can start to see the status of your documents and whether that's in there. If you are wondering whether we have everything, it will show you green check boxes or red X's on your applicant portal. And if we are missing anything that we need to make an admission decision, when I say we, I'm talking about the university will reach out to you. Okay. Anything related to document processing or anything related to your application specifically, it's best to reach out to your regional admission officer because they're the ones that are in charge of making sure to manage that process and get it all online. You can ask us questions as well, but you get a more direct answer about your application there, and you can upload documents that are necessary or needed or missing directly to your applicant portal without emailing or doing anything else. So it's a very systematic process. All students who have applied for early action, if you've completed that early action process and you're hearing this thing, don't know how you found out about this, which is cool, fine, great. But your all early action applicants will receive an update to their application on the afternoon of January 17th. And so all EA apps will receive an update. A small percentage of students will be admitted. An overwhelming large percentage of students will be deferred. No one will be denied in that process. Everybody moved over to the regular decision process. All remaining applications without decision, regular decision applicants, and the EAs who are deferred over will receive a admission decision no later than the end of March. And I'm telling you, end of March, like not mid-March, not third week of March, like end of March. We're going to be pushing all the way. So just keep that in mind. If you've applied and you have not visited campus, I would love for you to visit campus. However, I really want you to wait until you get an admission decision because it starts to get, I don't want you to put out money and put out expenses and make flights to go visit. Some people think they have to because we're keeping track. That's a waste of money. We're not keeping track. If you want to come visit, wait till you're admitted because when you're admitted, we have specific campus visit programs for admitted students and their family members that are far more helpful, far more in depth, full day practices, hang out with students, hang out with faculty, get to know this space, and that happens after you're admitted. So if you have not visited, wait until you receive an admission decision to make those plans. All of our admitted student events, our on-campus events, happen in April, and we have a number of them across a number of different weeks so we can accommodate everybody's schedule to make sure that you're getting the information that you need in order to make that decision. Once again, on behalf of all of us here at the Viterbi School, thank you so much for sitting through the session and our craziness in the beginning. Thank you so much for asking your questions and for your interest in the school. I know that you got a lot of stress going on in your life in these application processes. The fact that you're considering USC is an honor to us. It would be a privilege that we would be able to enroll any of you in our school here. Thank you so much and have a great evening. Bye on.